Growth is often seen as a measure of success, but the real challenge lies in scaling without losing what made the business successful in the first place. As founders step into larger roles, the shift from building day-to-day to leading at scale requires a different mindset, new structures, and a clear sense of direction. In our upcoming panel, From Founder-Led to Enterprise-Ready, Scaling Leadership Without Losing Your Soul, experts will take a closer look at the transition, what it takes to grow, evolve, and lead at a higher level while staying true to your core values and vision. So we are going to start off with Dionne Mejer, founder of Revenue by Design, and then hopefully we have our other panelists coming up, but I know you can handle it, so. So come on up, take it away.
Good morning, everybody. I hope everybody's doing well. Let me get a microphone going. Panel of one today. How exciting for all of you and for myself. So we're going to make this a little bit interactive today. Jake, you are here. Go get mic'd up. Thank you. We are going to do a duet. So nobody else showed up to our prep call. Sorry, I don't mean to tattle on people, but they did it to themselves. So as Jacob gets mic'd up, we're going to talk about what it means to lead with soul. So my question for you, and all of you just went, oh crap, I didn't know this was going to be interactive. He's smiling. So one of the things we think about when scaling is, how do I do this? That is 9 times out of the 10, the question we're asking ourselves, how? What do you think the biggest issue is when you are struggling with scaling? So I'm going to ask you, and just shout it out or go to a microphone. What do you think the biggest issue is? What is your biggest roadblock to scaling? What is it? Awesome. Love it. Why is that important? Okay. What you just answered, 100% I believe in, but a lot of people might go, makes me twitchy and it feels really woo-woo because my culture doesn't make me money. And you're all laughing, you get it. What brand are you wearing today? Because that brand is a culture. So the question is, how do you define your culture? And more importantly, how do you know if it's alive? How do you translate feeling into words? Because feelings and emotions are totally different. Just like MK was saying, if I take out the emotion, does my decision change? Neuroscience backs us up, and we are going to talk about that today. So, that being said, we now have a panel of 2. We are going to be a duet. I'm Dionne Mejer. I'm founder of Revenue by Design. I've been in sales, don't hold it against me. I've been in sales and tech for 20 some odd years, and I bring to life all of the fun things that are laminated on a wall that nobody can talk about. So, I bring all of that to life. And all the way from our CROs down to our ICs, bringing that to life. So that's what we're going to talk about today. That's who I am. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you, Dionne. My name is Jacob, and I'm today here for my work with LottoPlays as founder and scaling that company. So I'm going to be pulling a lot of my points today from my experience with that. Just a brief bit about LottoPlays. We are a live lottery data company with interactive dashboards for US players, so suiting for Las Vegas. But I looked through all my talking points these last few days and really tried to refine it down to a few nuggets so that people could take that away and go home with it and think back to it in their roles and lives. And I really boiled it down to 2 things, which was amazing. One being evolution and the other being processes. And so it sounds simple, but really a lot of it kind of fits under there. And I know we mentioned culture, heard a little bit about that in the last panel. Dionne started to touch upon that here now. But how do we really embed what we start as a founder into something that grows beyond us and scales and expands? And so that's something that kind of want to dive into some more detailed level now. And I think being a panel of two, a duet, we can invite a bit more interactive and hand raising. We can handle it a little better. But starting with culture, we really need to find people who complement our blind spots. And it's really about those diverse perspectives and experiences. It's good to have intellectual friction and not constant agreement. Constant agreement actually would be a red flag. Smooth sailing necessarily isn't a good thing. Oftentimes, you're on the right path when it feels like 2 steps forward and 1 step backwards, which is very frustrating. But that culture growth really starts to tie into a lot of the evolution. So this processes for culture start to tie into the evolution of the self and your personal growth. And really the capacity for the company's growth only grows with your own growth personally. And so that's something that I think we can start to dive into more as we talk about scaling with soul and keeping the roots of the company intact as things grow and quite frankly get more chaotic but exciting.
Controlled chaos, right? Chaos is contagious, so is calm. So one of the other things we talked about, so the other question for you is, what is hard? Go ahead.
No, that's okay. I'm going to give you this.
Okay.
So,
That's okay.
Hi, guys.
Giulio Veglio, owner of Paul Mitchell Schools. Welcome.
Hi, I'm Giulio, and I was a lost soul out there and found my way in this room. I was sitting in the founder's room, so I apologize for being late and interrupting. But we're here now, and let's have some fun.
All right.
Let's talk about our souls.
So we're talking about what is the biggest barrier to our scaling, or what do we think stops us, or what are we most afraid of at the end of the day? One of the gentlemen here was talking about culture. How do we keep our culture intact when we're scaling? What else are we concerned about when we think about scaling the business? What else? Change. Yep. Change management. We typically suck at managing that. Yep.
Loss of entrepreneurship and innovation.
Okay. My question back to you would be specify that. What is that definition? How do we feel about that?
Well, it becomes difficult, it becomes bureaucratic, there becomes a lot of processes, things grow, and we don't want things to become too rigid and inflexible and lose that edge of creativity and spark of innovation. We really want processes to protect innovation, not lower creativity and entrepreneurship, and that's a constant battle.
Absolutely. We're going to talk about that too. What else? What do you think is the biggest barrier when we think about scaling while keeping our soul intact, quite frankly?
You know, keeping the soul intact is one of the most difficult things we can do as founders, owners, managers. Yet, after COVID, it didn't happen right away, but we needed to kind of revisit the culture, the systems, how different generations interact, how they speak to each other, how they accept information, because you got a young baby boomer talking to a Gen Z and they're just bumping heads and you're losing your mind because you're like, how am I going to unite these people? So sometimes we lose ourselves in the confusion when we really need to anchor ourselves in what's happening, what's going on. How can we study these different generations so that we can revisit our culture and our systems and have them work together and understand each other more clearly with respect?
I love what you just said with that. So one of the questions I have for everybody is, as we think about culture, we think about change, apparently everything needs to start with a C. So if you've got another one, you should talk about C. But that being said, is one of the things that I did, and you don't have to get it, but I wrote a book called Lead with Soul. And it literally guides the reader through creating your leadership methodology. So to your point, Giulio and Jacob, when we think about what are our values, we cannot name them. We think about our standards of excellence. We don't know what they are, and we haven't communicated them clearly. As leaders, that is our job. That is our responsibility I was just on a call with a client, and he was frustrated because his team wasn't there. They were all working East Coast hours. They are West Coast time. Nobody was available for the West Coast. My first question to him was, as part of your playbook and standards of excellence, have you communicated with your team that we need coverage when people are here? Blank look. If we are assuming that people know they're going to figure it out, we're wrong. We have to get specific. So when I talk with folks, the one thing I say, and whether or not you get the book, it's the simple through line is identify, specify, execute. If I want to have an entrepreneurial culture, have I identified the top characteristic, there's the C word, of what that is? We make decisions cleanly. If we are injecting complexity, we're not doing it. Do I really need an SAP system at this size, or can I go with something maybe more simple? So have we identified our core values, and have we gotten specific? We're only going 3 layers deep on what that means. We are a culture, we have integrity. That means we always tell the truth. I respond instead of react. And maybe that's it. How do we build a culture of trust? And that's what that looks like. Because according to Gallup, our employees trust us. It's like 33%, 23%, 31%. It's horrible. Because we are incongruent as leaders, meaning our actions are not aligning with our deeds. And that lack of trust is an $8 trillion problem. So if you think culture doesn't matter and dollars, it doesn't impact dollars, we need to rethink our thoughts on that. Because it does. Because people are going to jump ship. And we all know the loss of an employee. We know the loss of an executive. It's huge. So, thoughts?
A lot of people jump ship without a life jacket too, though, these days. But you brought up a good point, and I'm sorry, I'll yield to you in just a moment.
That's okay, we're going to share.
We always talk about the people underneath us, when we should be focused on the example that we set for the people that work for us.
Behavior is caught, not taught.
It starts with the leader. It starts with the top. What is our behavior? What is our expectations? What are we modeling in the process? How are we modeling that? How are we sharing that? Because we get so caught up in the metrics and this and that and, the iron fist that we forget to align ourselves and be the example of what we expect. And then we inspect what we expect. So
I think that's brilliant. If you take away nothing else, behavior is caught, not taught. We cannot expect from others what we ourselves will not do. So one of my standards of excellence is to be on time and be prepared. If I'm late, I'm frazzled, and I'm unprepared, I certainly cannot be upset if my team isn't. Thoughts, Jacob?
Well, so as I listened to both Giulio and Dionne mention their points of culture and simplicity, it gets the gears turning on a lot of things. And one thing that comes to mind is mission, vision, values. Everyone on the team should be able to say the same thing almost robotically. Mission, vision, values, what are they? Everyone should know that's the guiding compass, that's the tip of the spear. That's how you take a company of one smart person, these people in this room. We're all here because we're very good at something. But how do we expand that and embed that to all 10, 100, 1,000 people that work with us and around us? Mission, vision, values, that's the tip of the spear, that's their guiding star. That way, whatever task or project at hand, you don't need to be there for that. They're thinking the way you are because they know the mission, they know the vision, they know the values. And just listening to my fellow panelists speak about some of the challenges there with difficulty and complexity when things can be kept simple, and by living things out in our actions as leaders by example, it brings up a nugget I wanted to share. I think it's timely too with the Artemis launch, is that the US was developing a method to write in outer space. It's difficult to write in space with no gravity. So they spend millions of dollars developing this pen to write in outer space. The Russians just sent their astronauts up with a pencil. They were able to get the job done. Simple. It doesn't need to be complicated all the time. What's the mission, the vision, the values? And we don't always need these big fancy systems, these cumbersome processes. We need it quick, simple, agile, but at scale. And so that's something to just kind of keep in reflection, keep in mind. And that's something that I keep in mind is like, the pencil versus the $1 million pen. We just need to write. That's not the main mission. Let's stay on track. Let's stay focused, especially when you're a team of one becoming a team of 10 or 100. So mission, vision, values, and keeping that simplicity by example with the mission, vision, values for the culture to really become embedded, because that's what matters most, is that it stays and it outlasts beyond you, because otherwise you're not really scaling, you're not really creating a company, you created yourself a job.
Thoughts on that?
You said that perfectly. And my whole thing was I base everything on how I prepare in order to scale the team, I have multiple companies throughout the country, and people are like, how do you do it? I don't do it. They do it. See, because what I do is when I started the company, my model has always been, hey, let me do it for you. Now let's do it together. Now you do it for me. Now you go ahead and train somebody else. And don't worry that they become better than you, because what that shows me is how amazing of a trainer you are. And that will build you to other heights. So once again, is we always want to take on this role in our culture. And like you said, keep it the KISS method, right? Keep it simple, silly, right? A pencil. But yet we try to think way too much out of the box when we can keep it simple. We need to understand first how to reset ourselves and reflect on what we need to do to keep it simple. That keeps our soul intact. We have to create rhythms. Sometimes we have to just sit. And what is the one thing that most leaders don't do? Sit in quietness, reflect, go into their faith, or whatever it is that they need to do to cancel all that noise out and get straight with their creator or with themselves before, and we talked about this in the founder's room, because when you wake up, what's the first thing you reach for? Your phone, so you know who to bitch at, most people do, who they got to call, what payroll finances are going. All of the day, your day starts with chaos and you're pulling your hair out. Hold up. Open your eyes. Sit up in gratitude. Say thank you. I thank God for the coffee he's given me, because I drink a lot. I'm like, thank you so much. Thank you for this bed. Thank you for this quiet time. I read a little bit of scripture. And then I go out and I get my mindset by going to the gym. And then I come back and I suit up for who I expect to be seen as the example. So I will suit up and get ready for, even if I work at home, guys, I'm not sitting in boxer shorts with a white shirt on. I still need to feel good about who I am. And once I suit up, I armor up, because we know we're going to face the battles, right? There's going to be unexpected hits from everywhere. Your systems and your cultures and everything that you put in place is going to get plowed by somebody who thinks their culture is better. And you should get the hell out of the way. Right? So I prepare for that before I open emails, before I open the phone, before I make the phone calls. Get straight and realign yourself. Know your purpose. Know what it is that you want to accomplish for the day. And see, and the peace that you will live in will reflect on the others around you. Unfortunately, there are people in our culture we have to really look at in a really pleasant way and say, we had a good time together. You can go now. And we can do that pleasantly. Why have it hijack your day and have you angry the rest of the day? Because when you walk around angry or you're thinking about the problems, what does your face look like? You got a stink face. And people are walking around going, oh, the company's in trouble. Look at his face. Look at her face. We're all in trouble. And then they're all scrambling to try to figure out what's going on. So be aware of you first. Be aware of what you set out, and people will be aware of what you present to them. I'm sorry, I talked too much.
Don't apologize. I think it's spot on. One of the things we talked about at the beginning was the how. And how do we stop from creating $1 million pen that doesn't work? How do we create an operating rhythm? So I lead a workshop for organizations, for leaders and teams on creating your operating rhythm. There's also some ways to do that in this book. I'll give you a little bit of insight into that, which is write down all of your negotiables and your non-negotiables and add time to it. Once you do that, plot it on your calendar. I have one calendar to rule them all. Mine, clients, kids, everything. Everything is on that calendar. It's eye-opening once you do that. As I coach executives, I'm coaching some founders right now to scale. We go through this exercise every time. And so my sales teams always say, do I have to go to internal meetings? And I'm like, no, you do not. You can get the AI-generated summary. Stop putting meetings on the calendar, please. Please. Have a lever and a layer, to your point, and I think we touched on this, is do I have a level 1, 2, or 3 conversation? And do I really need Slack? Do I need my Teams chat? Can I put myself unavailable and hold to it? Yes. Yes, you can. You know why? Because we're not launching nuclear codes. Guarantee it. We're not saving the manatees. No. Like, unless you're 911 for somebody, the only people that have 100% access to me are my children. The only. So if you are 911 for somebody, absolutely. You're not 911 for your team. So once we have our negotiables and our non-negotiables on our calendar, plot the time and hold to it. The other thing I talk with folks about is, to your point, we're going to take a breath, we're going to count to 10, we're going to have our shoulders come out of our ears, and we're going to work on responses. Followers react, leaders anticipate and act. I know I'm going to get touched on the shoulder. I know I'm going to get interrupted. I know things are going to go sideways. That's the world we live in. What I am going to do is I'm going to practice and rehearse my responses. Thank you so much. I can't do that right now. One of the things I coach teams on is if you are heads down writing a proposal, you're in a meeting, turn your out of office on. Thank you so much for your email. I'm heads down right now on something. Use the tools you have. Even for executives, put your out of office on. Let people know. So what is your leadership methodology at the end of the day? What is your user code? So I can talk to somebody and not be a jerk, right? Thank you so much. I can't do that right now. I've got to go. Can we connect later? Please, here's my cell phone number, text me. And so on your calendar, there should be a follow-up block of time, right? So that's what, when we think about these things from a scaling perspective and how do I personify culture? If one of my values is communication, if one of my values is integrity, if one of my values is kindness, how am I doing that? It doesn't mean I say yes all the time. It means I've got boundaries of steel and I'm nice about it. How do I do that? Here's my calendar. You know what? Dionne's busy right now. I need to go and do this, right? Or I need to book time with her because she likes it when I do it this way. That That's not us grandstanding. That is us being solicitous to somebody else. That is us showing up respectfully. So how are we doing that at the end of the day, right? So a lot of times I hear this, and I want to hear your thoughts on this, which is, I was at a conference one time and it was, hey, millennials need to be communicated with in this way. And it was this rant. And I was like, that's awesome. I'm a Gen Xer. Let me tell you what I need. And then we can compare notes at the end of the day and figure out how we talk together. Because communication is not a one-way street. That is a monologue. Relationships are built on dialogue. So I will absolutely, I desire to know how to communicate with you. I sincerely hope that goes both ways. So do we have an operating rhythm? Are we holding true to it? Do we know ourselves well enough to let somebody know how to communicate with us because clear is kind? And do we care enough to ask somebody, how do you need me to help you right now? Do you need the coaching side of me where I'm asking you questions, or do you need the consulting side of me where I'm looking at you and I know the answer to the question? Do you want me to give you the consulting side where I give you the answers to the test?
I need to raise more money, less time work.
So one approach and method that I keep with me and I take everywhere and use every day throughout the day is meditation. How do we create this protection, this boundary, this separation from the constant noise? I'm a hustler. My fellow panelists are hustlers. Everyone in this room is a hustler. I can tell. We're all busy. We lead people. We need to make sure our cup is full and we lead ourselves. We take care of ourselves, our self, our health, our sustainability, because we only have clarity within our team and our company if we have clarity within ourselves. And so how do we respond versus react? How do we show up with mindfulness? How do we protect ourselves? Because I don't know about you guys, but there's always at least 20 things at once that could be done. We're never going to be able to do them all at once, all the time. What gets done first? How do we protect ourselves? Because burnout for us means burnout for the company. It's how it goes. And so for me, meditation is the biggest thing. And if you're not meditating, please do yourself the favor. Like, personally and professionally, it is something you take with you everywhere. You can do it in the airport. You can do it right now. Even just 10 deep breaths. We had a panel here that started with some deep breathing, and I love it because it's so healing and important in aligning, and that's exactly what we need to keep ourselves ready to scale so that our company can scale. And it's just something that I think is profoundly important. And that's my method of keeping aligned, keeping focused, is just deep breathing and kind of stepping away from things and protecting my time. And so a little nugget I want to share again, kind of like the Artemis and the pen versus pencil, is Einstein. Einstein had a miracle year. Everyone recognizes him for E = mc squared, theory of relativity. He has a third one. I don't remember it right now. But those all came within 1 year when he was 27 years old. What did he do during that year? Einstein did the most loafing, the most going on a bike ride with no destination, getting in the boat and literally floating around and meditating, reflecting. So his miracle year, Einstein, that everyone knows him for, was from when he did the least work and the most reflection. And I think that's something we can all keep in mind, is that moment of step back, separation, reflect, meditate, connect, and really think how to respond versus react. That's what's going to create the breakthroughs and the synergies and the scalability for us. So a nugget for you.
I love it.
Yeah, and I love what you said, that we need to reflect. You talked about taking that time, because I can tell you the greatest successes I've ever had come from my greatest failures. Not because I dwelled on my failures, I built upon them. Every time, and I spoke about this yesterday, is every time I tripped, I didn't get up right away. I sat there. And I figured out what made me trip and how I can avoid that trip again so I can walk a better path. It's not going to say I'm not going to trip again, because I will, just like storms, right? One passes, another one comes. One trip happens, another one comes. But the important thing is to sit back, like you said, to meditate, to reflect, to look back and say, where did that happen? How can I make it better? And before we end today, I'm going to give you 3 challenges, and hopefully to help you think about how to restore that soul and get anchored in moving forward in 3 simple questions. There's 100 more, but you can AI them. But I love what you said. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think that's pretty profound. What else are we thinking from a scaling perspective? What else gets in our way, you think? We talked about culture. We talked about managing change effectively. What else? We talked about our rhythm. We talked about numbers.
I don't know. I was here for half of it.
What else gets in our way?
Well, for me, I think it's important how we treat failure. It's something just to touch on and build on what Giulio said, is that, is a failure hidden? Is it hesitant to be brought up, or is it celebrated? How is it treated? What do we do with it? Do we treat it as information, or is it something that brings a punishment? And really, it should be something to step back and say, okay, well, how did that happen? How do we prevent it from happening again? How do we become more robust? Not, you failed, this is a problem. It's an opportunity in disguise, actually. And I think that's something maybe that, coming from an engineering background, was instilled with me. Scientific method, it's not about getting an expected result. It's about proving something wrong, finding something unexpected, and then leaning into that, not washing the data to make it fit the rest. It's what was different, what was wrong, what's unique here. And that's really what we need to kind of, again, step back to look at the micro and the macro, the processes around us, the processes for ourselves, whether it be in the company or in our thinking. But how we treat failure, I think, is very important. And again, tying back to meditation, it's something that overlaps with that. And something I've learned in meditating and reflecting is, how do we treat failure? How do we treat these negative thoughts and experiences and emotions so that we can build a robust self, build a robust company? And I think that's something that, it's really important. We're only going to get out what we put in, and as pivotal key people in our roles and our companies and our teams, it's going to reflect how we are. So I think it's very important that we stay mindful to that and how we approach that.
Yeah, because I am always grateful for where I am today. And have you ever thought back and said, if I could always do it over again, I would do this, this, and this. I bet you if you did it over again the way you thought, you would still come back at this time and say, if I could do it again. That's like dating, isn't it? Yeah, right? If I can only, we think we know better as we go. We also get to the point to where we get reactive rather than being prepared. Listen, you put a culture and a system in place, and yet you're trying to prepare for the obstacle that's coming your way when it can be redirected back to what? What is our culture? What is our systems? How do we do things around here? I love your idea. I will take that into consideration, because even if it's a bad idea, because you sit there and go, that's stupid. No, oh, what a brilliant idea. That's wonderful. Let me talk to the partners, or let me look this over and see if we can implement this. Look at the Bible, or any great book, has not been rewritten in 2,000 years. It stayed the same. This is the belief. This is the culture. This is the system. There is no second edition. And when there is, y'all better be ready. You get what I'm saying? So stick to, yes, the hard learnings, the things that might have happened, but it might be as simple as protecting those failures by understanding that you've learned from them and you created a system from that, and maybe you discovered that that system isn't working as brilliant as you thought. So get your team together. This is where the involvement comes, because people help support what they create. Remember that. People will support what they help to create. So get them in a room, get the ideas going. It doesn't mean every one of them is going to stick. Throw that spaghetti at the wall and let's see what does happen. And when they get involved, they'll be your best advocates and they'll go for it. But if we're imposing our belief, It is our vision, it is our dream, but however, it takes brilliant people around you to keep that dream and that vision going.
I think that's really well said. And the more we can involve, right, we go from a doing it for people to a to, for, and with, for SFOR, right? We don't do things to people. We do things to people, we do things for people, then we do things with our people. So when we think about scaling, we think about what's important to me. And as a founder, we're not articulating that right away. As we scale, we need to, because as we bring people on, to what Giulio was saying, we want to be able to say, hey, as the leader, here's what's important to me. I care that we are on time. I care that we're honest. I care that we're prepared, right? Sub that, here's how we do that. Here are the reports that operations is going to give you. Here's the talk track that you get from marketing. Here's the training and the role play. Like, here's our before, during, and after for what we do and how we do it. That is how we scale without losing our soul. We always want to give that context. Here's where we're going. Here's what we're doing. Here's why we're doing it. Here's where we're open to ideas. If it violates any of our beliefs, we're not doing it. And it makes it really clear what we will and will not do. And a lot of times we haven't taken the time to be able to do the work to articulate those things. So if I were to ask you right now to complete your leadership methodology, what are your values? What's your purpose statement? So one of the exercises I lead teams through is, what is your purpose statement? And there's a prompt. I was doing prompts before they were an AI thing, a lady ahead of my time, right? So what do you believe in? How do you do it? And how do you know you're successful? So I believe in leaving every interaction better than when I found that. I do that by staying true to my values, seeing people, and I know I'm successful when either somebody tells me, wow, Dionne, thank you for leaving every interaction better than when you found it, which somebody actually said to me, and I was like, hot damn, it's working, right? Or they feel better. You can see it. They're lighter. So our values, our purpose statement, our standards of excellence. One of the executives I interviewed for this book, he runs NIGU, and his daughter unfortunately died from cancer. She was in the Orange County Children's Hospital. She was at CHOC, and she thought it was horrible that kids died and they didn't have anything. So she created joy jars, if any of you are familiar with that. He and his wife go to our church. And so they created joy jars, and that's the company he runs. And he tells his team, he's like, sorry, I'm sad today. I'm just a little low on energy because I'm thinking about my daughter. But what else he said was, he goes, we don't have time clocks, but we have expectations. And I thought that was really profound, where we don't have time clocks, man. It's not the 40s, right? Come on. So, but we do have expectations. And so do we know what those are? Do we have standards of excellence? Do we have an operating rhythm? Do we know what our goals and priorities are for the week? And we know how we get there. So as we think about scaling with soul, have we taken the time to articulate those things, not only for ourselves, in addition to ourselves, how are we going to communicate those out to our teams, like you were saying? So if I had to leave everybody with something, that would be my thought, and my leave behind is, how effective is your leadership methodology, and how well do you bring people along for the ride?
I think that's very important. You spark some more thoughts in my mind that, from my experience, were very important, is that sometimes, oddly enough, the most productive conversations you can have with your team have nothing to do with the work. It simply has to do with, how are you doing? What's going on? Like, how are you actually doing? Because everyone says, I'm fine, I'm good. Lies. There's a lot going on. We all know it. And we don't really connect enough, and we're not really mindful enough of that. And this is your team you're talking about. Like, there needs to be camaraderie. 1 + 1 becomes 3 when you have the right synergies and energies. And so how are you doing? And most often in my experience, when I've stepped off the hamster wheel, I know there's reports due. I know there's urgency, and there's emails, and there's action items, and there's all this stuff we gotta do. Step back. What's going on? How are you? What's going well? What isn't going well? What do you think? What are you feeling? Whenever I've had those conversations with people I work for and with, we're not talking about any work, but work just seems to get done better and smoother after those kinds of conversations. We show up with more understanding. We show up, rowing the boat in tandem a little more, fighting a little harder, understanding a bit more of where we each come from, and that we're all very similar. We're all human. We're here to have fun and connect. It's not just work, work, work. But like, how are you? And then to show up, full and ready to dive into the work, to attack the problem at hand, and not be surrounded in this chaos. Because, with that, it just becomes kind of, fighting to break even, spinning your wheels instead of making momentum, because the problems are inevitable. It's gonna pile up. The list will never be done. So how are you doing in connecting and moving forward and creating that synergy and camaraderie? And it's very important that we do that, because it's all too easy to get sucked into the emails, to get sucked into the chaos, whatever's, blinking red. I got like 10 flashing red lights going on at once all the time. I gotta rest, I gotta eat, I gotta make sure my team's resting and eat. How are they doing? Let's show up 100% and knock it down one at a time. And that's how we scale, that's how we build.
I don't know who said it, but it always rings in my head, and you've heard it before. People don't care how much you know, they want to know how much you care. And to sit there and say, how are your children? You're absolutely right. How is your husband? How is your health? When they are sick, are you calling them to take the time out? One of my partners is John Paul DeGioia, who owns Patron, he owns Paul Mitchell, and many, many other companies. I slipped into a coma in 97. That man was leaving me voicemails, knowing I was in a coma, just to let me know he was thinking about me. He was caring about me. And that says a lot. And when I woke up and finally, after about a month and finally through many, many months in the hospital, I would hear those recordings and say, here's a $1 billion man who took the time for a multi-$100 corporation. I own a multi-$100 corporation. No, anyway, but took the time, not just for me, he's done it for so many people. Those are the mentors that I want to learn from, that I want to be sharpened from. And that movement alone taught me exactly what you were talking about. Connecting with people, people, yes, they focus on the money, but when they know you care, money becomes less of the focus for them, because they want to work for a company or an owner that shows interest in them, not in the money. Too many of us make money the god. And let me tell you, if you're chasing money, it's easy to lose real quick, isn't it? Chase the wisdom and the knowledge, the caring and the hope, and watch how money will be the applaud for the great job that you've done. I don't know how much time we have left, and I'm sorry if I get passionate, and I'm sorry I came up here like a leaf blower.
Wrap up.
Okay, I'll give you my wrap up. I'm gonna ask 3 things of you. One is, and if you wanna write these down, you can, or if you got your AI on there, I want you to anchor in purpose. Why is that important to you? I want you to ask yourself that question. Why is anchoring down in purpose important to me? Number 2, I want you to write down something that builds rhythms, rest and reflection. So the question would be, how will I get the rhythm? And write it down. What is going to be your rhythm every morning, afternoon, whatever it is it needs to be? Once again, if you're not aligned with yourself, you're not aligned with anybody else. If you see anger and hate in your eyes and in your mind, your heart will see the world the same way. And lastly, stay rooted. Okay? Write down the relationships, the people that you know, the mentors that you have, the faith that you have, and list those people down. And who will you start connecting with? Because isolation can be very lonely as owners, right? We spend time at the bar. Write down, stay humble and listen to the truth. And don't defend it. When you write down the people you're gonna connect with people who are gonna be honest with you. And sometimes it's harsh to hear. But don't be defensive. Don't be reactive. You could later say, you're a crock of crap. But later, sometimes you will reflect on that and say, yeah, I am a jerk. Or maybe I'm a nice guy, or what, or a nice woman, or whatever it may be. But those three things, if you could do that and just take time for yourself, you'll see how much softer and how much more loving and how much more calm your soul will be. Thank you.
Love it. Final thoughts.
Sure. So again, I think just the nuggets to take away is really evolution of self, of your health, and of your self-sustainability. And then processes, really the founding vision, innovation, and expanding and outliving beyond you. And so like little nuggets to take away again is simplicity with the pencil versus the pen, and that reflection, Einstein with his loafing and his free time, where really the breakthroughs came. So I think those being the most important nuggets to take away that I shared with you today. Again, my name is Jacob, founder of LottoPlays, and we're a live lottery data company for US. Check out our website, download our app, LottoPlays.
Thank you. I think my parting thoughts would be, again, get the book, great. If not, that's cool too. But my question to you would be, how effective is your leadership methodology on a scale of 1 to 10? I know mine wasn't always, and like everybody here, we're all doing our thing. Everybody's got a story to tell. So how effective is our leadership methodology? If you need anything, please, my name is Dionne Mejer. Connect with me on LinkedIn, and we can go from there. Thank you. Enjoy the
Hold up your book for everybody. I think it's great. Dionne has a great book. I've been leafing through it. It's too perfect for our panel here. Yeah, zoom in. It's great. I've been reading through it. A lot of points that were made here today are in the book. I think it's something that helped me, and I'm speaking on a panel about it. So I think everyone can take some value away from it. So thank you, Dionne.
I always wanted to be Vanna White.
Hand model.
Thank you, everybody. Enjoy the show. Thank you.